It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
So this is The Hustle. We appreciate you being here. Brian Drake, Dwain McFarland. You can also catch Dwain's utilization report over at establishtherun.com. Evan Silva and the boys doing fantastic work there. I know their draft kit's available. So check it out. And if you want to check out a team that ran the rock like nobody's business, go over to Baltimore and see what Greg Roman was doing with Mark Ingram, Lamar Jackson, and the crew. Mark Ingram, current ADP, running back 21, 200 attempts last year, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. You go, wow, that's an okay year for a guy that led his team in rushing. He wasn't even the leading rusher on the team. The quarterback was. Averaged 16 points per game. Here's the problem. They can get out of his contract after this year for $1.2 million. It's probably going to happen. You know why? They drafted J.K. Dobbins, and he's really good. So in Mark Ingram's age 30 season, maybe they kind of push him out the door and get the young guy in there. You know what I found interesting, Dwain, about Ingram when I was looking through his stats and really what boosted him last year? 5 receiving touchdowns on only 21 receptions. That's incredible.
Yep. Yeah, everybody's worried about Lamar Jackson. They're so freaked out by what he can do. It's like these players are getting these looks that are just so easy. You know, if you go watch Mark Ingram's touchdown highlight reel, you'll see some of them. You're just like, wow, that was easy. Now, some of it is Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram's a very talented back and runs very hard, very determined for a 30-year-old, and still definitely has spark left. You'll see it. I mean, this guy runs with an attitude. He's fun to watch. But, you know, to your point, I mean, the issue here now, again, we're getting, you know, it's RB21. We're down in the RB2s right here. You know, you're into the almost the end of the 4th round. I've seen him honestly in drafts that cost more with sharper players. He doesn't go till the 5th round. I've seen him make it into the early 6th sometimes. Yeah. And so he's not a guy you're going to be able to count on, you know, every week. Are you going to get some big spikes out of Mark Ingram? Yeah. Is he going to be fun to watch? Yeah. When you get your spikes, is it going to be good? Yeah. But the Ravens have shown over the last couple of years, Drake, they're just willing to rotate players at almost every position, right? They keep their guys fresh. It's like you said, they go out and they add J.K. Dobbins. So, I mean, 37% of the team attempts is all that Mark Ingram had. I mean, so that tells you, I mean, how many times the Ravens freaking rushed the ball was insane. You know, and he did have huge efficiency, right? 5 yards per carry, but so did Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, you know, hit the 5 yards per carry, you know, mark. Now, Ingram did his breakaways per attempt, 5.4%, which is really good. That's above the league average. 19% tackles avoided per attempt, Pro Football Focus, which is also really good. You know, so here's the problem with Mark Ingram. He's going to have to stay hyper efficient. And as good as the Ravens are, you could easily see some regression in these touchdown numbers, right? It could be very easy on the number of attempts he's got here to end up at 5 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving. And then you don't feel so good about 1,000 yards rushing and 245 yards receiving, Drake. And that's going to be the problem. So we'll just break it down a little bit here for folks. We talked about the fantasy points again, so we don't really have to, you know, stick it out, you know, much there. But notice these games, you know, where they jump out. This is the opposite of what we've seen before. When the Ravens are working people over and don't have to throw, look, Mark Ingram, have a seat. These games where they're more competitive and they actually have to throw, they're keeping Ingram on the field more, okay? So down here, again, right, the Ravens aren't having to drop back and pass. They're destroying people. 39-point victory. Mark Ingram, take a seat, bro. So he never has the upside of that 30, 40-point game, even when he's just on fire, right? Because they're going to let the next guy in. And now it could be even more because it's not a guy that's just a free agent off the street named, you know, Edwards. It's J.K. Dobbins. And so I think your point is legitimate. So this Ingram's the opposite of what we've seen of some of these other running backs that are game script dependent, right? Where what we've seen is the lead runner actually takes the back seat in these games where they pass more. It's the opposite. Ingram's the guy they want out there. They trust him. But the Ravens just aren't in that situation very often. And when they go to blow people out, they like to rotate people in. They're never just going to they're never just going to gas the whole thing with Ingram. They're saving him. So he barely, right, hits these thresholds for RB2, right? He's into the RB2 range, but you'll notice he never gets up here in this RB1 range. You know, he's living, which he wasn't an RB1, you know, last year. I mean, so he's an RB2. But you're just living dangerously, you know, when you're on these numbers. Again, you know, his draft price isn't terrible, so you don't have to worry about that as much. But look at his routes ran, you know, he's down here below the RB2 threshold most weeks. And as to your point, 5 touchdowns when this is what's going on, you know, that's some hyper efficiency. And I think we'll continue to see some efficiency with the Ravens offense because they've built something that the league's going to have to adapt to. But the league surprises us sometimes, Drake. Remember when everybody was like, oh my God, Sean McVay is the best offensive coordinator we've ever seen in our whole lives. He's got a photographic memory and he uses 11 personnel all the time. And he puts his wide receivers in these jet motions and it confuses everybody until it didn't anymore. And the league
I think that all
up.
the time with the Ravens. Like, why do we automatically assume that this kind of, you know, I don't know, if you break it down, really, what is it, like a single wing almost? Like, why do we think this is going to keep going where people aren't going to figure out how to just stop running football?
I think some of it,
passing element.
Yeah, I think some of it is because this requires a further adaptation of an opponent's talent than what the Rams were doing. Most teams had the talent on their roster once they could figure out the Rams' tendencies on how that they could stop that type of offense because it was still 3 wide receivers on this field. Great. Now let's account for jet motion and wide zone and how they offset each other and stress the defense. And Bill Belichick basically took a lot. He took the cues from Matt Patricia in 2018, where Patricia and the Lions had shut down, you know, the Rams attack. And after that, everybody started copying it later in the season. The Rams decline actually started right in the second half of 2018. Then they got some good matchups in the playoff, one against the CJ, who couldn't stop CJ Fatboy Anderson from going off for like 200 rushing yards because the Cowboys weren't built to stop, you know, a heavy running back up the middle. They were built to play sideline to sideline against like an Alvin Kamara. Well, That's what the Ravens have here is they have a roster that's constructed to force teams that have built around nickel as their base and all of these third down type linebackers that can run everywhere. You got to have some bigger guys up front, right? To not just rush the passer, but to clog the running holes, to fill the running holes, to make the run fits. And it's problematic when you add a runner, like you said, that led the team was Lamar Jackson. And everything's based off of him, and the defense has to always account for him. And he's literally mismatched speed-wise against pretty much anybody. It's tough to put a spy on him. So there's that. I think the Ravens have a little more time left because they have so many elements in their favor. But there are some good, you know, if you look at the Steelers are the team that played the Ravens. They played the Ravens really well last year. Now, one of the games was with RG3, the last game of the season, because the Ravens didn't need it. But go back and look at the game. I can't remember, it was week 9 or 10 or something. The Steelers shut the Ravens offense down. That game actually, I think, went to overtime. And so it was ended up being a really close game. So there are teams that can do it. There's just not many, right? But if you'll notice, look at what that division is doing and look at how those defenses are starting to adapt and people taking defensive tackles and different things like that. So it's just a matter of how quickly those teams can catch up. It can be stopped. It's a matter of it's not a light switch thing like I think some of it was with the Rams. So final take on Ingram here, Drake. You know, I'm avoiding him at this price. He's priced, you know, now, like I said, I'm seeing him drafts fall to 5th and 6th round, which is that's much better. But if you got to take him this closely bunched together with the other backs we've just talked about, I'm out. Because, you know, I mean, the chance of him getting 225 plus touches is just really low, and it's a pure efficiency bet, right, at his price that you're paying for. You know, if we thought Mark Ingram had a chance of getting 250, 270, you know, carries, we'd be all in all day. I mean, he'd be going in the second round of drafts, but he's just not likely to get that. He's going to be around 200, 225, and we could see it be even lower for the reasons you talked about. They drafted J.K. Dobbins, and many people, friends of our show, right, friend of the show, Matt Waldman, ranked J.K. Dobbins as one of the best backs he's graded in like 5 years. He loves the guy, says he's a stud. So positives, explosive offense, run heavy offense. So even though he's only getting 35, 40%, you know, he could get to his 200 carries. The price is the ADP. We don't hate the player. We hate the ADP. It's just too much.
You've got him on PFF in your rankings, which you can go over to PFF and see right now as running back 27 coming off the board. The guy we're going to talk about next, you have directly behind him in the standings.
Which right here is he's at 21. So yeah, I'm quite a bit lower than consensus on Mark Ingram.